Welcome back, Web3 TV. I'm Cristina Najera. Welcome to Freedom with Web3 podcast. I'm very excited to share with you more updates, more news, and new ways for you to start your crypto journey. If you are curious to know how this world works, you need to stay until the end because today we have a very special guest. Constantin is an entrepreneur. He has been in the space since 2012 and he loves to learn. He holds a PhD in sociology, so we are going to discover a lot today. I love having you here. Welcome, Constantin, to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me, Cristina. I'm doing amazing and it's an honor to be here.
Yes, I'm very happy. I would love to start asking you who you are because I know a little bit about you, but the audience wants to really understand who is Constantin.
That's a great question. I'm still discovering this, about myself in many senses. I would love to say I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a person who is curious about life. I'm always trying to learn and self-reflect, to see, not just to learn as a didactic material, as something that will stay with you as part of the knowledge, but also something that will just make you a better person, a more giving and loving person. Because I believe that's what intrinsically what we have to get to, to the place of harmony, peaceful coexistence, and that's what I'm hoping to be, a good friend, a good colleague, and just a good human being.
Yes, 100%. We met in a meditation session, so you have a lot of things to share. And with that, I would love to know, how did you start your crypto journey?
So that started in 2012-13. I was a futures and commodity trader. I was hedging positions, futures and, grains mostly. So I was selling physical grain from Ukraine. This is where I'm originally from. I was born and raised in Kiev, and Ukraine is a big agricultural exporting country. So it's a big player in the world. So we've exported a lot of commodities, and therefore there was a need to kind of hedge this risk of, if there's a bad crop, or let's say the government is doing some new corrupt thing. So there was a lot of risks entailed with it. So I was, trading, and that's how I've learned about Forex, and then later about Bitcoin. So my good friend told me, there's this esoteric asset class called Bitcoin. You have to invest. So I've invested I bought 5 Bitcoins back in the days, and of course sold them multiple times, but that was my start of a journey. That was my excitement. It came from a speculative place, and I didn't fully understand the depth of the idea that it's a peer-to-peer payment network, and there's such a profound philosophy behind it, right? So it took me 2 to 3 years to only learn that there's much deeper levels. So then I moved in 2014. I moved to United States in New York, and fast forward in 2017, I became a partner and first fund of funds in crypto space, Bitbull Capital. So for someone who's not familiar with the fund-to-fund business, so we actually due diligenced other hedge funds, and our strategy was to invest in them. So we invested in Pantera, in Polychain, in Metastable, and many other big crypto hedge funds. Throughout the lifetime of the fund, we looked at 800 plus different crypto hedge funds. So when you look at their strategy, their performance, and how do they even exist as a business, that gives you a lot of important intel. And you're all of a sudden becoming on the top of the hierarchy, this entire, I would say, life cycle of all the investments, because you deploy to hedge funds deploy to projects, etc. Right? So that was an incredible journey, and I've learned a lot. Very grateful for this experience. Then I became a managing director in Wave Financial, which was, I would say, an asset manager with versatile strategies. We had an IRA license. It's a registered investment advisor, which is very highly compliant license. We have 2 major licenses in the United States, which is a broker dealer and IRA. So you have an opportunity to take money under management and get like officially take fees from this. So we did a lot of treasury management business. We did, VC funds, index funds. We created a lot of structured products. One of the fun thing we did, we actually tokenized whiskey distillery, Kentucky bourbon. It was the first. Now we call it with a fancy word RWA, real world assets. Back in the days, it was just an experiment, and it allowed for their people who love whiskey to get into the fractional ownership of the distillery. So their challenge was like, you finance us for 5 years ahead because you put in a barrel, right? And it has to, stay there to actually become drinkable, right? So
Yeah.
it requires a lot of financial, like, support in advance, right? So people who were big fans, they couldn't enter this business before, right? Because, the threshold was in millions. So we did a lot of experiments. And then fast forward, I'm co-founded Bullperks, which is decentralized VC and a launchpad, and then GameSpad, which is gaming ecosystem, and we invested in 70 plus projects, and that allowed me to kind of also look from A to Z how the projects come from the idea stage to the moment when they're listed on crypto exchanges. And as you know, right now, since like early this year, I become partner at Trade Dog Group, where we have also very different operations. We have an incubator, 80 plus companies incubated, 3 unicorns produced. We have a venture arm, early stage tokens only. We have a market making arm. We have a prop trading and research arm, and now building also wealth management, so to speak, like we call it smart liquidity layer. So yeah, all of this in between, I was researching, what's happening in the industry. I wrote 6 research papers, hundreds of articles. As you also know, I did 80 plus podcast episodes with top thought leaders in the industries, ranging from Michael Saylor, Tim Draper, Dan Moorhead, and many other great names. Became friends with top thought leaders. I learned a lot from them. And my passion was to share this knowledge with others. Like, so in a nutshell, this is like the short version of the journey.
Yes, because to get into your life, we need maybe hours. And thank you for making it simple. And I would love to say that when we enter this space, we don't really understand, right? As you mentioned, I remember when I first saw the Bitcoin paper, I wasn't very sure if I fully understand. And then I was going to events, I was meeting people who were on the ecosystem, which was very rare because this was back in 2018. And then I realized that it's more about giving power to people, because what Bitcoin does, especially Bitcoin, all the cryptos have similar values, is that when you have the opportunity to just transact or do a transaction between one person to another without somebody in the middle, it's where the magic happens, because you don't need to wait for somebody who approve your transaction. You don't need to think if it will happen or not, because somebody needs to approve that. So it's about time and it's about trust. So understanding smart contracts is very important, because anything in life, or most of the things we do with people, we have a contract in the middle, right? If you want to rent an apartment, you have a contract. If you want to buy an apartment, you have a contract. If you want to rent a car, whatever you do, you have a contract. But it's very outdated, because now if you use smart contracts, everything is within the technology and you don't need to think if it will work or not, because it's clear there. And I think that's the power of that, because it doesn't matter where you are. Since this is digital, you can utilize it everywhere. And that's when I really understood that crypto and blockchain is a way for people to gain more freedom, and also the opportunity for them to invest. Because I remember I was very young, I wanted to invest in something. And then my mom told me that there is a certain amount that I need to reach in order to be able to invest. And I'm like, why I cannot invest only, let's say, $100? They don't allow you. Like, you need to have certain amounts, you need to pass certain things. So I would love to know your perspective on that. And for you, first, what is freedom?
I think the most beautiful gift as human beings that we have is a freedom of choice. Now, this is more on a philosophical level. I can talk about it for hours and hours. Like, one of my favorite philosophers, actually, who was very keen on, like, Mirab Mamardashvili, who is a Georgian Socrates. Like, he lived in a very interesting time of during the Soviet Union era, where you have limited capacity to express, like, what you think. But his thought, like, were so profound, so deep, that, like, I think what happened is, like, most of the, like, people who were supposed to censor him, that they just didn't understand the depth, so they didn't touch him, right? So and he's one of his definitions of freedom, which was very close and dear to my heart. He was a big fan of Descartes, of Kant, and he just explained that, like, the ability to think is where the freedom starts. And I would add to it, like, to think critically. The next level is when you have an opportunity to surround yourself with people who empower you to be free. And what does it mean? We have a responsibility on a civil level. We live in societies, like, you live in Dubai, let's say I live in New York. There are people who live in their own, like, communities in different parts of the world. They have to trust the state, right? The state can give you either to empower you to have a more free society, or to take away this opportunity. We talked about it a little bit before we started the podcast. And autocratic regimes, they create a vision, like an illusion of freedom, where essentially just controlled, like, powerhouse, which is centrally controlling all the decisions. And it's a surveillance state, big surveillance state, with an illusion of freedom. Now, in democracies which can be less efficient, like, I would say US is a great example, where you have a freedom of speech, but sometimes it's not super efficient, right, to make any decisions whatsoever, because there's too many opinions, right? So that is where it starts. Now, the third layer, obviously, is the freedom of finance, right? Where you can move your assets, your money, like, you don't have to ask anyone a permission. Now, here's where I would say crypto lies very strongly with my personal values. Like, I think I'm not a maximalist, right? I'm somewhere in the middle, right? Because I think, like, the centralized finance and decentralized, they can coexist, right? Because you still need regulators to protect the retail investors, predominantly retail, from scammers. And unfortunately, in our industry, that's, like, we have those a lot. So, but at the same time, we need to have this synergy where the innovation is being propelled and is being given the opportunity to thrive. Now, one of the biggest challenges, like, which, like, in emerging markets specifically, you're coming from Latin America, I'm coming from Europe, like Eastern Europe, where we experience challenges, like, in getting into, like, developed economies. To buy a stock or a treasury bill from Ecuador or Ukraine, or from Venezuela, or from Argentina, or from other, like, developing countries, it's actually a very challenging task. Most of the people who live in, say, like, in developed economies like Germany, Japan, the United States, they don't understand this pain.
Yeah.
So, this is where it starts: the fractional ownership and the ability to access the market. So the access for the global economy is number one. So I think the stable coins and the, like, the crypto itself as an asset class is an incredibly important innovation to give the global access to any asset class. And we see with, real world assets being tokenized, I think, first of all, I think everything will be tokenized. This is, like, I want to be clear, like, stating it, like, recorded. Like, so because do you know how much assets, like, already, like, are virtual? Like, for example, how much cash are there, like, in the percentage wise? Do you want to take a guess? Just curious.
Wow, that's a very good question. I think same. Like, I think everything will be tokenized because we all want to own things, and that's the beauty of Web3. Because everybody asks me, "What's Web3? What's the difference between Web1, Web2, and Web3?" And that's when I agree with you, because I think Web1 is when you can read something, right? We are interacting just by reading. Web2 is when you can read and you can engage and you can add whatever you have, right? You can put a picture on your Instagram, you can write an article and put it on somewhere. and that's it. And the beauty of Web3 is that you can own, and that's when you tokenize something, right? So that's, I think, the
So,
beauty of that.
my point was like, so roughly, like according to the last research, like of the global like cash reserves in the world, like, it depends country by country, but in average is 8%.
Wow.
So think about it, 92% of all the money in the world are already digital. It's zeros and ones on our interface, whether like any bank, whether like it's HSBC or Chase, Bank of America, or any other bank in the world, you just look at the interface and you see a number.
Yes.
It's a digital number. You don't actually hold this cash. You pay online, and all the governments, they're actually trying to digitize their economies like in the most fastest way possible. Now, what it means that we're not actually completely changing the world. People who think that the crypto is like, oh wow, it's such an innovation. It is an innovation which is on a database, and it's on a technical level, an incredible like innovation. But let's not go there. To simplify it, think about it as a different database on the back end that you don't even care about.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about like what like is DBS, Standard Charter, or Bank of America are running on AWS. Regular retail users don't even like ask this question when they open a bank account. So to simplify it, the ability to move your money freely, like if you wanna, let's imagine you are right now coming back home, or you need to send money, like you want to send $100,000, right? If you were to do it through a banking system, they would ask you a lot of questions. Oh, do you have a contract between the two entities? Like, oh, well, like what is the source of funds? Like, do you need to prove this, prove that? With like any cryptos, starting from Bitcoin, Ethereum, or stablecoins, you don't need to ask a question. In 20 seconds, like, the money are there. And I think that is the beauty that we haven't had before. I think it's super important, just this particular act of freedom, that you are the ruler. You're the master of your wealth. And you can actually, like now, with like your hard wallet as a bank, hold it as a Swiss bank account in your pocket, and travel around the world with millions of dollars. So that's another innovation, and it's another like incredible like beauty that we as an industry show to the world. Now, of course, there are other challenges which, the way we, I would say, convey the message sometimes is like can be done much better in terms of user experience, in terms of the language, and that's what we're working on. For example, in TDX, like we as a company trying to simplify it for regular users, right, who don't need to learn the complex lingo of the degens, like who don't need to learn what is a TPL, right? So simple decisions, simple user journey, and access to one of the safest tokenized assets in the world. I think this is the future.
Yes, 100%. And as you mentioned, real world assets, I think this is a very good opportunity for people to understand in a very simple way why crypto, why they should go and buy something that it's connected to something that they can touch and see, right? Because people most of the time think that crypto is only tech, which it is. However, now if you see that this crypto is attached to something that you can see and you can touch, I feel like they will understand better how they can enter the space. We see companies like Lofty, for example, they are in the US and they are tokenizing real estate. So they don't need to buy the whole property. They can just invest $500 and they can get returns from that. So I think that's a very good way for adoption, because that's the biggest problem in Web3. People don't really understand. And as you mentioned, they need to really get into the degen space where they need to learn all these specific words. And with that, I would love to know more about how do you see the future? Because what I think is that people don't need to learn these topics, they don't need to learn these words. Because if we take the internet as an example, long time ago, the internet came in and now we all use it, but few people know how it works, right? Do you think the same will happen with crypto, and when? Because I've been in the space for a while and I don't see it coming yet. However, I also think that the 2.5 wave is here, which means that companies like yours are working very hard on creating a user experience where the user don't know that is crypto, or they are using this technology on the back end, but they are experiencing a Web2 normal experience on their phones or on their laptops. They are reading as there's no crypto behind. However, they are already on it. So that's, I think, what will happen. However, I would love to know when that wave will be set.
Well, every innovation takes time. So like I don't have a particular time frame, but I do believe that for example, if we think about the artificial intelligence that is coming into our lives in a incredibly rapid like pace, I think I would give it a time frame between 5 to 10 years. People predict that in 6 years we're going to have AGI. Again, I don't want to speculate on this, but I would say that 5 to 10 years is a very tangible time frame because as an industry, we're recording right now in 2024, right? We're only 15 years old. That's like we're teenagers. So it's very young. You of course you cannot compare like to like over 100 years of stability of like traditional finance and all the rails. But if you actually start reading history of how, let's say, Nasdaq appeared, right, as one of the like top stock exchange markets in the world and the most liquid, the most prominent, where like for a company to go to an IPO, right, initial public offering, that's a dream to go to a Nasdaq, right? And then obviously there are other stock exchanges in the world, but I would say like arguably Nasdaq is still number one, right? And to ring the bell and to be there in New York and to experience this. Now, how about just like starting to talk about like how inefficient it is right now? The trading on like on the ETFs on like on stocks, like it's happening like not 24/7 as in crypto. It's only 5 days a week. And actually it's not even full 5 days. It's like working hours in a particular part of the world which everyone else have to adjust to, right? So that means if you're in the opposite side of the world, let's say in Singapore, right, and if there's 12-hour difference, I just flew there, so I know. It took me 19 hours. So, and imagine that means like you are already like constrained to a particular framework, right? And there's like people who are into finance, they know what is T plus two, T plus three. So there are a lot of inefficiencies in the existing market. So um, long story short, I think it's inevitable that everything will go into 24/7 trading. Blockchain is the most comprehensive, the most robust, uh, I would say, data-centric solution that will allow this. So that is already like inevitable. Now, when it's going to happen, I'm not even really sure, and I don't really care at this point because I know it's going to happen. You don't have to know when it's going to happen. If you're thinking about like of the greatest minds in investment world, they don't think in 1 to 2 years. They actually always look at the 10 plus years horizon. I listened to I can like Khan, like one of the greatest like investors. Like they had like with Bill Ackman and Michael like Khan, they had as always this quarrel. They're private equity investors. Their average positions in the market were 15 to 20 years. So that's what I think we have to change the mentality from speculative and the trading mentality, where it's like, oh, daily, monthly profits, to long term investors. And I think when this transition is going to happen, and we're going to have more and more people coming into this market who are not only smart, but they're long term oriented. I give you another interesting statistics that we were just looking at, like the total serviceable market right now, like people who actually participate in DeFi, right? Decentralized finance or staking and LSTs, LRTs, like in different protocols, right? It's only 7.7 million people.
Wow.
That's not a lot, right? So others are mostly institutions. So we don't have a real retail adoption yet. Why? Because my belief is, again, user experience, like convoluted, like lingo and explanation to it. Like the interfaces are complex. They're designed for, I would say, technically equipped people, like people who have like more, I would say, developer mindset. not the regular user who doesn't understand things. I mean, listen, I was just trying to onboard my friend who's a VC. He's a traditional, incredibly smart gentleman with 2 higher degrees, like 3 exits. It took him 2 hours to try to install like MetaMask. And he had to call me to say, like, listen, I don't know, like this doesn't work. So we're talking about like a person who's like incredibly smart, like, well, like our grandmothers would not be able to do that.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So that has to change, right? Once we're gonna start having like simplified products, like the Amazon principle, like that will allow us in 2 clicks to reach the result, that I think will be another wave of adoption, much greater. So we're gonna go into hundreds of millions, right? We already have a lot of people who hold the wallets, but the real users who actually are excited about the experience, I think that's like in tens of millions. So it's very early, but I'm a true believer that it's inevitable. It's not an option. It will come. All the assets will be tokenized. All the exchanges will be on blockchain. And then eventually, if you think about it, all the banks already are, they're already preparing for this. BNY Mellon, who has $50 trillion under management, already adopted the custody of Bitcoin. So this is already happening. Like, trillions of dollars will flow eventually into this market. And then we'll see how it's going to be distributed. In United States, to give you another statistic, like we have about 1.3 million financial advisors. They hold trillions of dollars under management. They are there to sit with you and talk about your portfolio. I don't know. According to modern portfolio theory, 60/40, I don't know, bonds and stocks, and it's very conservative. They give you different funds and like different investment opportunities. Now, if you look about like, so traditional financial advisor, they typically don't outperform S&P 500. Now, if you were just to invest through Robinhood or through any other like traditional app to S&P 500, like to top 10, you would do pretty well and you would pay less fees, right? So I do believe that soon we're going to see more and more apps in crypto that are similar to Acorns, Wealthfront, Betterment, Robinhood, those call it whatever, super apps or investment apps. There will be the conduit to simplify this user experience from point A to point Z, where again, the registration will take under a few minutes, and the path to success where you just deploy capital efficiently and then have incredibly lucrative APY, 10% and plus, which for emerging markets, as you know, for example, Venezuela has 400% inflation, Argentina over 100%. For them, that's not an option. It's a life-saving opportunity. And by the way, they cannot get it in like, let's say in pesos easily. It's not that easy. When the bank is under default or the entire economy is collapsing, we've seen it in, by the way, also in Nigeria and many other markets. When the banks halted the withdrawals, what happened? A lot of people went to buy stablecoins. People are treating this economical opportunity as neobanks, as hedge against their governments. And it's no longer a revolutionary, like, this, like, people perceived it as in the beginning, it was like I would say more of a bit an anarchical, like, approach. No, it's a efficient solution. So that's what I believe we're going slowly but surely.
Yes, a lot of things are happening, and we are very excited to see how the market is evolving and how every company is adding a lot of effort. We see here, especially in Dubai, a lot of big companies are coming. OKX just got a license. Gate.io is also working to get the license. So I believe in Dubai, specifically, I'm talking from my experience living here for the past 4 years, the government is putting a lot of effort to educate people because, as you mentioned before, there are a lot of scammers. And when there's no regulation, of course, that will happen because nobody is putting some rules there, right? So I think now, if people see that governments are involved, for example, in El Salvador, they are using Bitcoin as a currency, which is insane
It's a
because
legal tender, yes.
it's a proof that this is something that is real and this is something that people can trust. Because I think that's the most important. If they have been scammed in the past, for them it will be hard to trust that again because somebody or some project scam people and now they think, oh, crypto is a scam, but it's not. It's just, and there's a popular phrase called Dior, do your own research. And I think what you mentioned will eliminate that because a lot of companies are also working on just give people the opportunity to invest in a portfolio. So they don't need to go and do their own research because they've done it for them. So they come in and they don't need to know what is Algorand and what is behind, what is Polygon and what is behind, who are the founders, how is the community, what is the vision of the project. They just, trust the company and their portfolio so they can invest on that. And I remember when I decided to go full time on crypto, I knew crypto since 2018, as I told you. And then I was living here, I was selling real estate, and a lot of clients came with crypto, a lot of money, like, like they didn't need to get funding from the bank. They have full amount to buy properties. I was very curious what was happening. And then the bull market was there. For somebody who doesn't know what's bull market is when everything is up, because usually in the financial markets we have bull market and bear market. So when the bull market happened, a lot of people took their Bitcoin, their altcoins, or any coins they had, and they came in to Dubai and they bought properties. And that's when I realized that this is real and, like I should just be focused on that because I knew it, I understood. But for me, it was something that I had it on the side. I was learning about it. I was holding coins. I would love to know when for you was that moment when you realized that this is it and I'm going to work on crypto full time.
That's actually a great question. I think it happened after Ethereum ICO. It was an ironic story. I had access to Ethereum ICO and I passed on it. I actually, when I first read the white paper and I saw I thought like the people behind it were like, I was not sure about their background. Vitalik was an incredible person, but like back in the days, he didn't have like this, I would say, traditional a background of an entrepreneur with exits and like someone who you can like look at it and say, okay, well, this is impressive. Like he was doing a startup eventually, right? So but I promised myself if it gets to $10 that I will buy Ethereum because I thought like there's definitely something in it because it can go either nowhere or it can become incredibly big. And I remember the day when it was like $10 and I bought it. Like I didn't even have opportunity to buy it at 10 because I thought, okay, I'm going to buy it in the evening. And I bought it for 11. And, the rest was history because when I saw it, when it was already 300, and, I exited partially, I realized that, well, there's a lot of applications that can be on top of it, right? Similar to iPhone, the iOS is like the underlying, system that holds, everything in between, and then you have applications, that are being built, like millions of applications. And when I realized that everything can be decentralized and there is opportunity to build any application in this format and it can like bolster the economy of the emerging markets specifically where there's a lot of inefficiencies of transacting between each other and actually, as you mentioned, accepting one asset for another asset. I thought, wow, well, this is a true revolution. I didn't see it in Bitcoin back in the days. I thought Bitcoin was an amazing hedge, right? But it didn't have this particular property that I was missing in the store. And then I thought to myself, you know what? No, that was 2016. So no matter what, I will do everything possible to be part of this economy. And in 2017, that's when I went to the first fund of funds, and then I was grinding my path through it. And yeah, coming back to, in Dubai, you can officially buy property for crypto, and then actually you can pay salaries with crypto, which I want to emphasize how important it is. A lot of my friends who establish companies in different jurisdictions, they actually suffer because most of their transactions are happening in stable coins. It's incredibly inefficient for them to provide invoices for banks or somehow to reconcile this, right? So they would actually prefer to pay everything in crypto, and they're happy to pay taxes, by the way. That's not even an issue. The issue is that most of the jurisdictions don't accept this opportunity. So the fact that Dubai is super open to it and they're providing the infrastructure, that's why people come here. That's why we established the company here. That's why many other big exchanges, as you mentioned, or foundations are present. So this is a very important hub. And, I do believe that more and more countries will compete for crypto dominance. I give you an example. Like now, crypto donors are number two in the United States in terms of contributions to the super PACs and the campaigns for presidential election.
Wow.
So, I mean, and if we're going to be completely transparent, what it means, when you are investing heavily in in one of the candidates and you know that they're going to somehow not do any favors, but they will at least try to provide a transparent, proper environment. Because right now with Gary Gensler, being SEC, I remember we're having a lot of bad things happening to the crypto industry, unfortunately, right? So I'm a big believer that the bill, you probably know about the bill that will allow Bitcoin become part of Treasury reserve. When that happens, I don't say if, when that happens, that is going to be also another pivotal and seminal event in our industry.
Yes, I think a lot of things are coming together now, but it has been a while because I remember when I started learning, it was not common. Like people, if I go to Ecuador now, for example, if I start talking about crypto, people don't really get it. And here it's very common. I feel like even you go and you see the billboards and you see crypto, so it's very familiar, it's accepted. But I know this is not common in other cities. I would like to share more about that, not only in the US, but somewhere else, because you have been traveling for a while.
Yeah, I think again, so I see a very good tendency in emerging markets more than in developed markets. And so there's a battle for miners right now happening. Like US is also trying to lead it, providing in especially in Midwest, they provide incredible opportunities for people. Like in Texas, Texas is booming right now in mining, and many other states. So that's a very smart strategy because all of them are paying taxes and they actually optimize the grid. One thing that not many people talk about, like that the efficiency of renewable energy that is being used for mining right now is actually helping to optimize electrical grid for the neighboring cities and overall the understanding of how the electricity should be distributed. It's starting to ask all these uncomfortable questions, which antiquated systems before they never even talked about. Now we have in a different battle for providing a very good environment for the companies to establish, right? I believe Dubai is still number one in this. They're super smart about the strategy, but more and more jurisdictions are doing that as well. If you look at the simple statistics, where the biggest exchanges are incorporated and where do they have licenses, that can give you most of the answers. Not to put all the names, but you see a lot of them are Bahamas, Seychelles, and others. So it's Caribbean. Why? Because in uh, offshore companies. And of course, it's one reason is tax optimization, but another reason because it's easy to kind of negotiate the proper, so to speak, KYC, AML regimes, right? So when you all have to verify the identity and you have to be compliant with international laws. I think at a time, Lithuania, Estonia, and Europe did a great job. Depending on which industry you're going to through, I've talked to one of the major lawyers in Gibraltar. They also did a great job. Very, very robust framework. Back in the days, Malta was interesting jurisdiction. Now I'm not actually sure, so I don't want to talk about it. But I see more and more uh, countries are fighting for crypto entrepreneurs going there and establishing their operations there. And I think this is smart approach because at the end of the day, if you like Portugal, recently did the same for traders, like, a lot of traders moved there, like, so Europe is a bit challenging because I was born and raised there, but like now with Mika coming in, like I'm not sure what's gonna happen. So for me, there is a risk there. I would highly advise people who are trying to establish operations in Europe, like familiarize yourself with what Mika is gonna bring, because that can change and shift a lot of things. But if you look at this region, still, I would say Dubai is number one, and then like more and more markets in Southeast Asia becoming more open-minded. We were talking about Bali right now. They have incredible, like Indonesia as a country is trying to be more open-minded. Thailand, Vietnam is a superpower, and where a lot of developers are actually, especially in gaming field. We see Korea is still like in this part of the world, like Korea, Japan. Japan has one of the most very reasonable and also like oldest frameworks where you see now publicly traded companies started to buy Bitcoin or their treasuries, following MicroStrategy example. And I think this trend will continue. A lot of Switzerland obviously is leading, like, this derivatives ETP ETFs, like, structuring. So a lot of people go there and establish foundations. This is the most legitimate jurisdiction. Some people go to still Panama, and I think that's also an interesting solution as well, depending of what's your preference. But overall, it's going to depend on the smart governance from each country. Like, I think now we're in a position where we are $2.3 trillion market as an industry. It will 5x in the coming 5 years. So that means, just to remind all your listeners, that it's going to be similar to gold. Gold is about 11 trillion right now. When it's going to happen, I think more and more countries will fight to actually get more cryptopreneurs.
Yes, the beauty of cryptopreneurs. And we have seen how they have built a lot of wealth that without crypto couldn't be possible. I think that's why people really love this technology. A lot of people are really trying to understand how they can get involved. And this podcast is for that, for people who want to dive in and understand how they can enter the market. And with that, I would like to ask you the last question. Constantin, can Web3 bring more freedom?
Obviously, the short answer is like it's already happening, right? So, and I think it will bring more and more freedom. And I would really hope that people who understand this, they will unite. So us as like global citizens of the world, irrespective of which country you're in, that you will try to foster like this economy. That you will try to fight for the rights for us to have a voice. I mean, again, example in the United States, 50 million crypto holders are now a pretty significant like voice in the society. Like you see presidential candidates goes and they speak at crypto conferences. They want to win the hearts and minds of people who are representing such a huge superpower. So, and I hope this percentage will grow. I hope people will unite, not just in national interest, that they will see an interest of us as people who represent like the opportunity to spread this freedom and this beautiful right to control our wealth.
Yes, 100%. Thank you so much, Constantine. It was a pleasure having you here. How people can find you, how people who want maybe to invest in your projects, who want to get investment, who want to contribute with what you're doing, where they can find you and where can they see what you are doing?
Well, it's actually pretty easy. I'm available in LinkedIn, Twitter, Telegram. Like, you can like if you Konstantin Kogan, you can just like Google my name. You will see like a lot of like links, and I'm very responsive. Like you can always find my email on the YouTube channel, or you can just DM me directly in LinkedIn or Twitter, like whatever works best for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Constantine. It was a pleasure having you here. And thank you for watching. Remember to share this with your friends because everybody deserves to know more about Web3, AI, cryptocurrency, and blockchain. I'm Cristina Najera. See you next time.